The hum of the office was suffocating. It wasn't the kind of place you'd expect to find yourself pondering the meaning of life. But here I was, stuck in my own mind, my thoughts racing like a train that wouldn't stop. It was 12:23 p.m., and the clock on the wall mocked me with its rhythmic ticking. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting an unnatural glow that made everything feel even more unreal. I had just finished my own lunch, the stale sandwich barely touched. Across from me, my wife, Tara, was sitting at her desk. It was one of those days when you could feel the distance between us like a wall you couldn't see, but could sense growing taller and taller with every minute that passed. Tara had always been the strong, independent type. She didn't need my attention, didn't need my approval. But that was exactly the problem. She didn't need me. For the past few weeks, I'd noticed little things, small, insignificant shifts in her behavior. The way she seemed distracted during our evening talks, how she'd been spending more time at work than at home, the subtle but distinct absence of the warmth I used to feel when I was near her. These things didn't add up to a full picture, but the nagging feeling in my chest wouldn't let go. But today was different. It started when she reached into her purse during lunch break, her fingers brushing against the leather of her wallet. I was watching her from the corner of my eye, absent-mindedly sipping my coffee. She paused for a moment, her fingers lingering on the smooth surface, as if she was hesitating about something. Without saying a word, Tara opened the wallet. She always kept it close to her, like a treasure chest. But today, she wasn't just looking for cash or her ID. No, today was different. Today, she pulled something out, something that made her face change. I knew it before she did. The color drained from her face, her cheeks losing all warmth. Her eyes went wide, and for a brief, split second, I saw something in her expression that I hadn't seen in years. Shock, horror, fear. I couldn't help it. I couldn't resist. My heart pounded in my chest, and I leaned forward, trying to catch a glimpse of what had caused that reaction. It was the message. It wasn't meant for her. It was meant for me. I had written it weeks ago, during a time when we were closer. Back when things made sense. The words had been simple, direct. Maybe too direct. A message hidden inside her wallet that had no business being there. It had been a small thing, nothing too significant, but enough to make her feel something. But there was something else. The ring. The one I gave her years ago. The one that symbolized everything we'd promised. The ring wasn't just a ring anymore. It was a question. A question she didn't want to ask. I had slipped it into her wallet that morning without thinking, without truly understanding what it meant. I had hoped, no, expected, that she would find it. But not like this. Not in the middle of a mundane office lunch hour, when everything was supposed to be normal. For a second, Tara didn't speak. She just stared at the ring and the note, her fingers trembling. I could feel the silence between us thickening, like a fog that rolled in and refused to leave. It was suffocating. I hadn't expected her to find the note, let alone the ring. But now that she had, I realized how much it hurt to see her like this. The woman I loved, the woman I trusted, seemed so far away from me in that moment. Tara carefully placed the note back into the wallet, her hands unsteady. She didn't even try to hide her emotions. She wasn't pretending. I could see the real Tara, frightened, confused, unsure. Without a word, she stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. The movement was sharp, decisive. She didn't look at me as she walked out of the office, her footsteps echoing down the hallway. I sat there, frozen, staring at the empty space where she had just been. My hands clenched into fists, the anger bubbling up inside me. Not at her, not yet, but at myself. Why had I done this? Why had I given her something that didn't belong there? I didn't have the answers. I didn't even know what I was expecting her to do when she found the ring. I only knew one thing for sure. Whatever had just happened, it had changed everything. I didn't go after her. I couldn't. Part of me wanted to believe she would come back and explain herself, but deep down, I knew that wasn't going to happen. Something had shifted between us, something that neither of us could take back. The rest of the lunch hour passed in a blur. My colleagues talked, laughed, went about their business as if nothing had changed. But for me, everything had changed. By the time Tara returned, the office was empty. The glow of the fluorescent lights felt harsher now, and the silence seemed unbearable. She walked past me without a word, heading straight to her desk. I watched her from where I sat, trying to find the right words to say, trying to figure out if there were even words that could fix this. But I didn't speak. Not yet. What was there to say? I didn't know if we could fix this. I didn't know if we were even meant to anymore. And so I sat there, helpless, watching her disappear behind the walls we had both built up. I didn't move. My eyes remained glued to the spot where Tara had been sitting, the silence in the office growing louder by the second. The ring, still sitting in her wallet, felt like a distant memory, as if it had never truly been a part of what we were. I sat there, trying to piece together the chaos of the moment, but all I could think about was the way she had looked. Her eyes, wide and disoriented, her hands trembling. That wasn't Tara. That wasn't the woman I knew. Minutes passed, but I didn't dare check the time. My phone buzzed once, twice, but I ignored it. It could have been work, it could have been anything, but I couldn't focus on that right now. The only thing I could focus on was the image of her, alone, looking at the wallet as if her entire world had just shifted. I heard the sound of heels tapping on the floor, slow, deliberate. Tara had returned. She wasn't looking at me as she walked past my desk, heading straight for hers. I watched her out of the corner of my eye, feeling the tension stretch between us like a rubber band pulled taut. She was holding herself together. Barely, but I could see it. She wasn't angry, not in the way I had expected. She wasn't yelling or confronting me. She wasn't doing anything except distancing herself. And that was worse. The silence in her eyes told me everything I needed to know. The distance between us had grown so much in those few minutes that I couldn't reach her anymore. I waited for her to speak, to break the silence, but she didn't. Instead, she sat at her desk, staring at her computer screen, her fingers moving across the keys in robotic motions. The woman who once laughed at my jokes, who made plans for the future, now seemed like a stranger in front of me. And I couldn't help but wonder, had I become the same to her? The minutes stretched on, and I couldn't shake the image of Tara from my mind. Her face, pale and drawn, the tremor in her fingers as she touched the note and the ring. It was clear that something had broken inside her, some fragile boundary I hadn't even known existed. I had expected anger, or at least some kind of confrontation, but there was nothing. Just this cold, eerie silence that seemed to fill every inch of the room. It was like I wasn't even in her world anymore, like I had been erased from the picture. I glanced at her again, still sitting at her desk, eyes glued to the screen. I knew she wasn't reading the words on her monitor. Her mind was elsewhere, probably on the note she had found, or on the ring I had slipped into her wallet without thinking. I could feel the weight of the unanswered questions hanging in the air. Was it guilt? Was it regret? Or was it something worse? I wasn't sure how long I sat there, my mind spiraling, trying to make sense of everything. I thought about the note I had left her. It was short, maybe too short, but it had been enough to make her stop everything. Enough to make her question something. But I hadn't expected her to find it this way. I had assumed it would be something she'd find later, in a moment when she wasn't distracted, when she had the space to think about what it meant. But now it was too late. I stood up, my legs stiff, my heart heavy. I had to say something, anything to break this silence. But as soon as I opened my mouth, I felt the words catch in my throat. What was there to say? What could I say? The truth was too complicated, too messy to fit into a simple conversation. I wasn't sure if I even knew what the truth was anymore. I watched Tara, still staring at her screen, her posture rigid. Her fingers paused, then continued typing, almost mechanically. She wasn't even looking at me now. The coldness in her eyes was more than just confusion. It was something deeper, something more painful. She had already made up her mind. Are you going to ask me about it? I heard myself say, my voice barely above a whisper. The question hung in the air between us, but she didn't respond. She didn't even flinch. I could feel my pulse quicken as I waited for her to acknowledge me. But all she did was continue typing, her focus unwavering. I had never felt so insignificant in my entire life. And then, without looking up, she spoke, her voice low and measured. There's nothing to talk about. I felt the words hit me like a slap in the face, and for a moment, I couldn't breathe. Tara. She cut me off, her tone sharp now, but still strangely calm. I need some space, she said, standing up from her desk. She didn't look at me, just grabbed her coat and moved toward the door. We'll talk later. When I'm ready. I watched her leave, the door clicking shut behind her. I sat back down in my chair, my hands trembling. The reality of the situation started to settle in. heavier than any weight I had ever known. She didn't need me to fix this. She didn't even need me to be there. But there was something else, something I couldn't quite put into words yet. I had known Tara for years. We had built a life together, a future, or so I thought. But now, it seemed like we were both standing on opposite sides of an invisible divide, and I wasn't sure how to cross it. I glanced back at the desk, where the remnants of our life sat. The empty coffee cup, the scattered papers, the quiet space that used to be filled with conversation. It all felt so hollow now. It's strange, you know, how quickly silence can swallow everything. 1 minute, the office is full of the usual chatter and the hum of phones ringing, and the next, it feels like everything is drowning in this heavy quiet. I sat there, staring at the closed door, wondering what just happened. Tara had left. I hadn't expected her to leave. Not like this, not without a fight, not without confronting me. But she didn't say another word, didn't give me a chance to explain anything. And maybe that was it. Maybe there was nothing to explain. I glanced at my phone, hoping for some kind of message from her, some sign that she hadn't just shut me out completely. But the screen remained empty, a stark reminder of the distance that had grown between us. I thought about the ring again, the way it had slipped from my hand into her wallet that morning. A gesture that seemed so small, so innocent at the time. But now it felt like the catalyst to everything unraveling. I tried to focus on work, to distract myself from the crushing weight of uncertainty that hung in the air. I clicked through a few emails, but the words blurred together, none of it making any sense. Every time I looked at the screen, my mind would wander back to her, her expression, her cold silence. Hours passed, but they felt like days. It was almost like I was waiting for the world to shift again, to give me something to hold on to. But all I had was the nagging feeling that whatever had happened between us, whatever had broken, couldn't be fixed so easily. At some point, I left my desk. I didn't know why. Maybe I needed to get some air, to clear my head. Maybe I was looking for a sign, something, anything to tell me what I was supposed to do now. The hallway outside the office was empty. The usual murmur of people having lunch or chatting on their breaks was gone. It felt like a ghost town. I kept walking, my footsteps echoing against the walls. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I had to keep moving. I reached the break room and froze. Tara was there. She was sitting at one of the tables, a cup of coffee in front of her, her fingers tracing the rim absent-mindedly. She didn't see me at first, and for a moment, I thought about turning around, about leaving her to process whatever was going on in her mind. But then she looked up, and our eyes met. The moment felt like it lasted an eternity. Her gaze was unreadable, distant. She wasn't angry. She wasn't upset, at least not in the way I expected. But she wasn't here with me, either. It was like she was in a different world, one where I no longer had a place. "Hi," I said, my voice awkward, unsure. She didn't respond at first, just stared at me, her expression soft but unreadable. Then, almost as if she had to force the words out, she spoke. "We need to talk," she said quietly, her voice low and controlled. I didn't say anything. I didn't know what to say. Tara stood up, walking slowly toward the window, her back to me now. "I don't know how to say this," she continued, her voice barely audible. "But I've been feeling lost. I don't think I can do this anymore." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I wasn't ready for them. I hadn't prepared myself for this moment, for the finality in her voice. It wasn't just that she was saying she needed space. No, it was more than that. It was the way she said it, like she had already made up her mind, like she had already given up. I stood there, frozen. There was nothing I could say that would make it better, nothing that could fix what was broken. She had already made up her mind. The damage had already been done. "I've been trying to find the right way to tell you, but I don't know if I can anymore," she said, her back still turned. "I think we've reached a point where we're just existing. And I don't want that. I can't keep pretending that everything is fine when it's not." The words stung, each one cutting deeper than the last. I could feel the tears rising in my throat, but I refused to let them fall. I couldn't cry. Not now. Not in front of her. Tara turned around, her eyes searching mine. "Do you even know what it's like?" she asked. "To wake up every day next to someone who doesn't even see you anymore? To feel like you're invisible in your own life?" I wanted to answer. I wanted to tell her that I did see her, that I hadn't stopped seeing her. But the words caught in my throat. The truth was, I didn't know what it felt like to be in her shoes. Maybe I had been blind to how far apart we had grown. Maybe I had missed all the signs she had been trying to show me. But it was too late for apologies now. Too late for explanations. I don't know what to do anymore, I whispered, the words barely escaping me. I thought we could fix this. I thought we were stronger than this. She shook her head, her eyes soft but firm. I don't think we can fix it. Not this time. And just like that, the last thread that had been holding us together snapped. I stood there, my mind spinning, trying to make sense of everything she had just said. The weight of her words pressed down on me, suffocating me. She didn't want to fix it. She didn't think we could be fixed. And that realization felt like a gut punch. For the first time in years, I had no control over anything. I opened my mouth, ready to say something, anything, to make this stop, to make it feel like it wasn't really happening. But no words came out. Instead, all I could hear was the steady pounding of my heart in my ears, drowning out everything else. Tara turned back to the window, staring out into the distance, as if the world outside could offer her the answers she was looking for. I don't want this to be over, she said quietly, almost to herself. But I don't know how to keep going like this. It was as if she was speaking a language I couldn't understand, one I hadn't even realized we were both learning. There was a sadness in her voice, a resignation that I couldn't shake. And I realized, in that moment, that I had lost her long before this conversation. I had lost her in the small, unnoticed ways, the missed dinners, the late nights at work, the times we just stopped trying. I don't know what to say. I finally managed, my voice hoarse. I didn't know you felt this way. Tara let out a sigh, her shoulders slumping. I don't blame you, she said softly. I don't know when it started. But somewhere along the way, we stopped being who we were. And I don't know how to get that back. I didn't know what to say to that. How could I fix something when I hadn't even seen it breaking? She turned back to me, her eyes searching mine for something. Maybe for an answer, or maybe for a reason to stay. But I had nothing to offer her. Nothing that could undo the damage. I think you've already given up, she said, her voice quieter now. And I think I have too. The finality in her words struck me harder than anything else. It wasn't just that we were in a rough patch. It wasn't just that we needed a break. She was telling me, without saying it outright, that this was the end. She was done. I felt numb, like the world had shifted underneath me, and I couldn't keep up. All I had were these questions. What went wrong? Why didn't I see this coming? But none of it mattered. It was too late for those questions now. And as I stood there, staring at her, I realized something else. There would be no coming back from this. No fix. No simple conversation that could erase the distance between us. She had already made her decision. And so had I. The silence between us stretched long and heavy, a chasm neither of us could cross. Tara stood by the window, her back to me, but I could see her reflection in the glass. Her shoulders were tense, and her hands clenched tightly at her sides. I wanted to reach out, to pull her back, to do something, anything, to undo this. But I knew it wasn't that simple. It never had been. We were both too far gone. I moved, slowly at first, as if testing the ground beneath my feet, unsure of where I was going. My mind was a jumbled mess of anger, regret, and disbelief. How had we gotten here? How had everything we built together fallen apart so quickly? It felt like one moment we were laughing, planning for the future, and in the next, everything shattered like glass. I never thought it would come to this, I said, my voice thick with emotion. I wasn't even sure if I was talking to her or to myself at this point. I thought we were stronger than this. Tara didn't turn around. She didn't respond right away, but I could feel her breath, slow and steady, like she was trying to hold herself together. Finally, she spoke, her words barely a whisper. Sometimes, strength isn't enough, she said. We've tried, but we can't keep pretending everything's fine when it isn't. I'm tired and I'm sorry. Her voice cracked, just for a moment, before she regained control. The apology stung more than I expected. It wasn't the words themselves, but the way they hung in the air, as though they were the last thing she had left to say to me. I wanted to say something in return, but what could I possibly say? The truth was, I felt like I had already lost her. This wasn't about fixing things anymore. It was about the slow, painful realization that we were both living in a version of this relationship that no longer existed. Tara slowly turned around, her eyes meeting mine. There was no anger there, no tears, just a quiet acceptance. And that was what hurt the most. The realization that, deep down, she had already made peace with the end of us. I can't keep going in circles, she said, her voice soft but firm. I don't want to keep hurting you or myself. We've been drifting for so long, and I think we've both known that it's been over for a while now. I shook my head, unable to grasp the finality of her words. But I don't want this to end. I didn't want to lose you. I could see the shift in her eyes as she processed my words. She wanted to say something comforting, I could tell, but there was no comfort left to give. I don't want to lose you either, she said softly, but we're not the same people we were when we started this. And maybe that's the hardest part to accept. There was a pause, and in that moment, I could almost hear the sound of our past slipping away. The life we had built, the promises we'd made to each other, all of it seemed so distant now, so fragile. How had I missed the signs? Why hadn't I seen the cracks? The weight of her words settled over me like a heavy blanket. I was drowning in them, suffocating. There was no air left in the room, no space to breathe, no room for hope. The finality of it all hit me like a tidal wave. I think we need to let go, Tara said, her voice breaking as she stepped closer to me. It's time. I didn't know how to respond. How do you respond when the person you love tells you that letting go is the only option? I felt my heart pounding in my chest, my stomach twisted in knots. The pain was almost physical, like a wound that wouldn't heal. She reached for her purse, and I felt a part of me die inside. This was it. The end. There was no more pretending, no more hope. She was leaving, and as she turned to walk out of the room, I knew that this moment, this goodbye, would haunt me forever. Goodbye, she whispered, barely audible, before she stepped out the door. I stood there, frozen, unable to move. The room felt smaller now, colder. The walls seemed to close in around me as I listened to her footsteps fading away. And then, in the silence that followed, I felt a coldness settle in my chest, one I couldn't shake. The reality of it hit me harder than anything else had. Tara was gone. And maybe, just maybe, I was too. The silence in the office was deafening after Tara walked out. I don't know how long I stood there, staring at the door, my mind completely blank. Time had stopped, and with it, any sense of clarity I thought I had. The weight of her departure wasn't immediate. It crept in slowly, sinking into the pit of my stomach, heavy and suffocating. I couldn't bring myself to leave the office. I just sat at my desk, staring at the screen, unable to focus on anything. The room felt foreign now, as if the very air had changed. It was like a strange fog had settled over everything, and I was stuck in it, trying to figure out what to do next. I thought about calling her, but I knew it wouldn't help. She had already made her decision. The words we'd exchanged in the break room had left no room for negotiation, no space for reconciliation. She had said it. There was nothing left to fix. And deep down, I knew she was right. But it didn't make the pain any easier to bear. I looked down at my hands, the same hands that had once held hers with promises of forever. Now they felt empty, useless. The ring, the one that had always been a symbol of our bond, was now just a cold piece of metal, a reminder of everything I had lost. I should have seen this coming. The signs had been there. The distance between us had grown over time, subtle at first, small things I chose to ignore. Late nights at the office, her eyes drifting away when we spoke, her hands always busy with something else, never quite reaching for mine. But I had pushed those thoughts aside, convincing myself that everything would be fine. We were fine, right? But we weren't. And now, I was left with nothing but questions. Was I the only one who hadn't seen the end coming? Or had Tara been planning this for a while, quietly suffering in the silence we had created? I reached for my phone, hoping to find something that would pull me out of this spiral. Maybe a message from her, some kind of explanation, an answer to the questions that kept swirling in my mind. But there was nothing. No texts, no calls, nothing. The screen remained dark, mocking me. I couldn't help but wonder if this was really the end. Would we never talk again? Would she just disappear from my life like a ghost, leaving me to pick up the pieces? Or was there still some chance, some thread I could pull on to bring us back together? But even as the thoughts raced through my head, I knew the truth. The thread had already snapped. Tara had made up her mind. And the hardest part was that I knew she was right. There was no going back. Days passed after Tara's departure. The office felt quieter, emptier. It was as though the life I had once known had been wiped clean, leaving nothing but the echoes of what used to be. I tried to keep busy, working late into the night, ignoring the phone calls from friends who wanted to check on me. I had no energy to explain. I just wanted to stay in the shadows, away from everything, away from the life I had built with her. But something started to change. It wasn't immediate. At first, it was just a small spark, a little fire that began to flicker in the dark corners of my mind. I was angry. Yes, angry at Tara for giving up on us without a fight, for abandoning everything we had built. But that anger began to fuel something else, a desire to reclaim control over my life. I realized I had been living in her shadow for so long, trying to be the man she wanted me to be, that I had lost sight of who I was. I had forgotten about my own dreams, my own ambitions, and I wasn't about to let her leave me broken. One afternoon, as I sat in my office, my phone buzzed with a message. It was from an unknown number. At first, I thought it might be a work issue, but when I opened it, I saw Tara's name on the screen. My heart skipped a beat. It was a short message. I made a mistake. Can we talk? I stared at the screen for a long time, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. There was a part of me that wanted to say yes, to hear her out, to try again. But then I remembered how easily she had walked away, how quickly she had thrown away everything we had. And something inside me snapped. I had spent too long waiting for her to see me, to appreciate me. I didn't need her to fix me. I didn't need her approval. I had been living in her shadow for far too long. So, I typed back, slowly, deliberately. I think we both know there's nothing left to talk about. You made your choice. I'm moving on. I sent the message and leaned back in my chair, a strange sense of relief washing over me. It wasn't the answer I had expected to give her, but it felt like the right one. I had reclaimed my life, my dignity. And then, a week later, I heard the news. Tara had been caught up in a scandal at work, something she had been trying to keep hidden. A business deal gone wrong, an affair with a colleague, a web of lies she had woven to cover her tracks. The details didn't matter. What mattered was that she had been exposed. It was almost poetic in a way. All the control she had tried to maintain, all the secrets she had kept from me, had come crashing down around her. The same woman who had walked out of my life, expecting me to fall apart, was now facing the consequences of her own actions. I didn't feel satisfaction, not in the way I thought I would. But I felt something else, peace. It was the kind of peace that comes with knowing that karma works in its own way, that the universe has a way of balancing things out. Tara had taken the easy way out, and now she was paying the price. As for me, I was rebuilding. It wasn't easy, but I was doing it. I started focusing on my career, reconnected with friends I had lost touch with, and rediscovered passions I had forgotten. Life, strange as it was starting to feel like my own again. And in the end, I realized that the most powerful revenge wasn't in getting back at Tara. It was in living well, living a life on my terms, without her. And that was the victory I had been waiting for all along.